Is the Aravalli range being legally weakened?
The Aravalli Range, one of the world's oldest mountain range and North India's natural shield against desertification, is under threat.
What does the 100-meter rule really mean? And why Aravalli Hills matter more than you think? The Aravallis are older than the Himalayas, but yet today they faced one of their biggest threats. Not from nature, but from a definition that has been accepted by the Supreme Court. Hello everyone, welcome to Vajram and Ravi's Flash News. My name is Shubhangi Singh and today we are going to understand that what is this new definition that has sparked protest across the states, what is the clarification that has been given by the government and how Supreme Court has also come up with a clarification in this context. So let us try to understand all of this from scratch, starting with understanding what exactly has happened. So last month only, what Supreme Court did was that it accepted a new definition, and this definition of Aravalli Hills was given by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. What was the definition? The definition was that the 100-meter would be the acceptable height to be classified as Aravalli Hills, otherwise it wouldn't fall in that category. And this was the ruling that triggered protest across Haryana, Rajasthan, because that meant if Aravalli Hills, if certain hills because of the given classification based on height do not classify in Aravallis, they might not get the protection and they might be exploited for development, which will leave our environment, ecology exposed to a lot of threats that we cannot even imagine. So in this very context, these protests broke out. Now when we are talking about the Aravalli Hills, so let us understand, so let us talk about them as well. So Aravalli Hills are one of the world's oldest mountain ranges. They are also known as residual mountains, which were made in the one of the first orogenies that we have seen across earth, and they stretch nearly for 700 kilometers. Not just in one state, but from Gujarat, Rajasthan, then we have Uttar Pradesh, some parts of Haryana, Delhi as well. So this spread is not just important geographically, it is important ecologically as well, because it directly contributes to prevention of desertification beyond Thar Desert. It regulates the climate in the given region, it recharges the groundwater, and most importantly, it acts as a green buffer for Delhi-NCR region. Now in this very context, once we have established that what exactly has happened, now let us move to understand this whole case from scratch, that what was the ruling that was given in form of a uniform legal definition by Supreme Court. So as I said, Supreme Court gave a new definition for Aravalli Hills, that any landform in the Aravalli district which has more than or equal to 100 meters of elevation above local relief will be counted in Aravalli Hill. Then there is another definition that has been given, that is of Aravalli range. So any clusters of 2 or more such hills which are located within the width of 500 meters, they will be classified as Aravalli range. So any hillocks or hills which do not fall in this category will not be counted as Aravalli Hill or will not be counted as Aravalli range. Now just after the protests had happened and unfolded, that is when Supreme Court came out with fresh directions. In this scenario, as soon as the protests broke out and people, civil societies, environmental groups unified to voice the concerns that could bring critical damage to the environment and ecology, Supreme Court came up with new directions as well, where they brought temporary restrictions on any fresh mining leases so as to ensure even if the issues which are left with the expert committees, they are sorted, and there is a clear picture into why the definition has been brought up to the Supreme Court, and they have also asked for identification of ecologically sensitive zones, conservation critical areas, area where mining may be permitted but under strict conditions. So Supreme Court has taken note of the fact that the new definitions might be ecologically detrimental, and that's why they have come up with the new court directions. However, in this very recent week, we also have seen government coming out and giving a clarification, where the government clearly explained that the earlier definitions were ambiguous and inconsistent, and that is why they wanted some regulatory clarity, they wanted enforcement, and they wanted to avoid any litigation in future, and that is why the new definition has come into picture. Government has clarified that there is no intent of allowing mining, and there is no mining allowed in Delhi's Aravalli Hills. The government has clarified their position that this definition is being misunderstood and it does not weaken any ecological safeguards. The government has also brought out some facts here, where they said the total area of Aravallis, that is 1.47 lakh square kilometers. In this context, already 90% of it remains protected, not just by definition of Aravalli Hill or Aravalli Range, but by the forest laws, eco-sensitive zones and mining regulations. So in this context, the ecologists, the civil societies, the environmental groups, they need not worry about this whole definition. But then why these ecologists, civil societies are protesting against this particular definition? That is also an important perspective that we need to take in consideration. So now let us move to the other side and understand that what might be behind these layers. So the first thing that we need to understand here is, when we are talking about height based definition, that means if we have kept a criteria of 100 meters and we have kept a criteria for 500 meters in terms of clusters, that means this will only consider the geographical range. But ecosystems do not function like this. Ecosystems based on biotic and abiotic components and their exchange of energy and interaction, this cannot be determined by geographical proximity or altitude alone. Be it the low hills, the ridges, the hillocks, all of these are important for the wildlife corridors that are in place, the aquifers recharge that take place, and the forest continuity that is established. So in any way at all, if we are trying to understand an ecosystem and trying to classify based only on altitude or height is incorrect. And that shows the basic flaw in this understanding, especially ecologically. So this has been pointed out. Another thing that has been brought to the front in front of concerns is the fresh issuance or the starting of mining and construction. So any place which does not have the altitude of 100 meter hillocks or hills, they will not be part of the protection that is given to Aravalli Hills or the Aravalli ranges, and they might be opened up to mining and real estate itself. And that is why court had to make sure in the recent direction that they gave after the definition that no fresh mining licenses or contracts will be given. And in this context, experts have already warned that up to 60% of Aravalli, if this actually unfolds, that it becomes vulnerable. So when we are talking about 1.47 lakh square kilometer, in that 90% having the protection, 60% of it loses protection based on this definition, and if that is used for mining and construction, most of the Aravalli becomes exposed and vulnerable. And what will that lead to? It will lead to the long-term environmental damage, be it in form of habitat fragmentation, like when we are talking about wildlife corridors, they will be broken down, there will be more human and animal conflict, there will be loss of vegetation, there will be soil erosion. In this particular context, you will be either seeing flash floods or you will be seeing more of droughts. Furthermore, the groundwater system that exists in this area, because Aravallis function as an aquifer, all of this also might collapse in totality. And that is not all that Aravallis do and that Aravallis is threatened in form of. There are many other purposes that Aravallis serve, and that might also be brought into question here. For example, that we clearly know, if you see Aravalli here, this is where you find the boundary of Thar Desert on one side and you found the northern plains on the other side. So Aravallis is responsible for stopping any eastward expansion of Thar Desert itself. That means it makes sure that the area beyond Aravallis is protected from desertification, be it eastern Rajasthan, be it Haryana, western Uttar Pradesh, Delhi-NCR, it protects all of that area. And if we are stripping this area because of the new definition through mining, that means we are exposing a bigger area to desertification. Another thing that you understand through the purpose that Aravalli serves is climate regulation and air quality. Because of the height that you see, the altitude that we are talking about, this region is responsible for regulating climate. It reduces dust storms, it moderates temperature extremes, and it also helps in maintaining the air quality as well. So if we are talking about ripping this region of the forest cover it has, the altitude it has, these all purposes will not be served, and Delhi-NCR region, which is already suffocating as a gas chamber, this chamber might expand and it might exist across if we strip off the green lungs that are present in North India. Now that we have dove in detail into the ecological aspects of it, now let us move to understand other factors around it. That how Aravallis impact hydrology, how do they impact the biodiversity and also the livelihoods in the region. So if we talk about hydrology, the groundwater recharge in this whole belt is abled by fractured rocks and forest cover, because they are the ones which are able to absorb the runoff of the water that comes with rainfall, and they are the ones responsible for recharge of aquifers in this region. And furthermore, this is the main source of support that is seen to the limited rivers in this region, be it Chambal, be it Sabarmati or Luni. So if at all this is compromised, then the rivers will also be in a difficult position. Where the flow might be compromised, it might level down. Where the biodiversity present in the rivers might be compromised. All of these will have a cyclic and forward going effect, a domino effect that we cannot interpret even if we want to at this given stage. Another factor that we have in front of us is the biodiversity, which is directly associated with Aravalli Hills and the forest around it. Be it the leopards, hyenas, jackals and the native plant species which are present here. This is the region which facilitates a wildlife corridor between the forests, and if these forests are disturbed through mining, this habitat will be fragmented and there will be a direct threat to these species, be it flora or fauna. And talking about livelihoods, especially the tribal dependence is extreme, because the tribal and pastoral communities, they directly rely only on the forest produce, they rely on the grazing lands and the water sources, mostly the water sources that are already pre-existent. They do not have the modern facilities, they do not have the reach to the government sources, they do not live in cities like us. So for them, forest is their land and that also might be ripped off. And in this scenario, that is why experts are warning, if this is the thing that is in front of us, then there is a direct risk of ecological tipping points right in front of us and also irreversible damage that we will not be able to correct if we do not keep this in mind as of now. So if we do not check the mining that is expected, then we have only 7 to 8% of the Aravallis, and every factor that we have discussed will be compromised. There will be irreversible damage, there will be downgradation, and this is where the final check needs to come. Do we want development or do we want ecological conservation? Because that remains the core dilemma in place, because when we are looking for administrative clarity, we are compromising on the ecological complexity that exists in Aravalli. When we are looking for short-term economic gains, we are compromising on long-term environmental security. And when we are talking about sustainable mining, it might be actually a point where there is a loophole being created without any proper enforcement. So all in all, if we are looking at this situation, this comes to the usual day-to-day issue, We are talking about one side on development and one side we are talking about conserving our environment, and both of the choices lie with us. We want the trade-off or not. What are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comment section. That was all from my side. Thank you so much.